Welcome to the Perez Performance Podcast. My name is Tyler Perez. Today is episode 4. We have the one, the only, and the greatest mustache I've ever seen on a human being is Cody Craig. Cody, what is up, dude?
How we doing, man? You might be the last public appearance of the stash for a while, so you gotta take it in.
We're taking it in. This is gonna go in. This should be in the MoMA if that's the case. This is going into the archives.
There you go.
National historic moments. Oh yeah. So a little background. So Cody and I kind of just connected, I think, over the last few months a little bit through Ben. So shout out Ben Racky. He was guest number 2. So if you haven't listened to his episode, definitely go listen to that. But I know you were doing a lot of stuff with Ben, and I'm not going to take away from your thunder. I'll definitely let you talk your background. We'll get into a lot of stuff you post. I think some of the stuff you have is amazing when it comes to kind of your background and your knowledge. Without holding the people away from what you do, Cody, can you kind of tell everybody who you are and your journey essentially to where you've gotten to today?
Yeah, so I am a doctor of physical therapy. I have my CSCS or strength and conditioning specialist. I think I have my CPT from a long time ago. I don't know if I kept that up or not. Oh well. But I've been in sports for as long as I can remember. I've always been kind of the person I liked to be outside. I like to work out, I like to lift. That's how I made friends. So I kind of started just coaching my local swim team, and then I loved that. And then I got into it like heavy, probably my sophomore year of college. And I just took it off from there. So I just kept going. Me personally, I fell in love with powerlifting and jujitsu after I did my undergrad career. And it led to exactly where I think I should be, because it kept me, how do I say this? It put me in a really bad spot to find out what I actually truly like to do for a living for myself, or at least what keeps me going, if you will. And I found a way to make a career out of my bad decisions that I did to help people not fall into that trap. So that is what brought me to my current position.
Awesome. I mean, just going into that, and I know a little bit of your background too. I know you did a lot of stuff with like youth sport as well. And then you've done the powerlifting, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I give all you guys who do the MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, between you, Matt, Manos does it a lot. I got a buddy who I'm going to try to get on here at some point, who I was college basketball teammates with. He's like,
Nice.
you gotta try it. I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to get choked out. I'm fine. I can live with myself without doing that. So I give you guys a lot of credit on that side. But I think one thing that you said too, and kind of going into this, is the idea that you were able to kind of learn from your mistakes, and that kind of put you into the position you're at today. I know doing a lot of stuff, working with those specific athletes in that kind of realm, as well as just the rehab side. I know you've done a lot of rehab work too, and kind of that prescription strength. So I would love to kind of get into essentially like when you're looking at a lot of the rehabs, and I actually saw it on Instagram that you posted probably 40 minutes ago, that the idea with the training aspect as well as your rehabbing and physical therapy essentially are looking very, very much the same, essentially, there really is very little difference. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to get into that, especially in that PT realm, that they're starting to realize that, it's not so much like what a pendulum it used to be, where you have the deathbeds over here, and then on the complete other side, it's, you have your squat rack. That I feel like a lot of the two are starting to converge almost into one in an instance. So if you want to kind of go on that, where your experience and kind of your whole idea with your training as well as the physical therapy side.
Yeah. So coming from the training background I had prior to me becoming a full-fledged PT, I think that already skewed my brain to view things a little differently, or at least look at the athlete differently. I mean, when I had first started, you go in and it's like, I tell people it's like a nail tech salon. Like, it's just this like row, and it's just the same motions everyone's doing. And it's like, you look at 87-year-old grandma who fractured her hip, and you see 16-year-old, soccer player, probably, getting looked at D1 colleges that tore her ACL. Is there a little bit of carryover between those two patients? Yes, but a majority of the time, absolutely not. And when you walk into those places and it's like you see them doing the same stuff, who's going to get better? Grandma might get better because she's frail and decrepit, but soccer player, 16-year-old, she's got to have a work engine and brakes that are going to outlast for a 90-minute game. And it's like, that's not, clamshells and bird dogs are not going to be it. And that never sat right with me. So I've always kind of looked at like, it's a spectrum, rehab and training. It's always going to be on that spectrum. And it's like, well, let's just slide this down if you start to get a little aches and pains. We don't necessarily have to go full force for performance, but we can look at it at a more localized or specific realm. So we're just the least removed possible, right? And it's like, oh, now we look like training, and now we're still getting all these other benefits of training, with just a little bit of a caveat there. And I think today you go to those places and you see someone who's never probably lifted a weight in their life or never picked up more than like a 40-pound kettlebell, because there's clinics that don't have more than 30 pounds available to their athletes, you should never say sports therapy if that's the highest dumbbell that you have. But anyway, it's like, I just lost my like train of thought there a little bit, but I think this is a disservice and it's not going to work. And that's why it's like, we see people in this rehab space, whether you're PT, chiro, or massage, it's like, guys, at the end of the day, there has to be a loadable metric that we follow and produce to reach the goal, because their goal is to be an athlete or their goal is to do something athletic, and that requires force at the end of the day. And it's like, if you're not having the force, you're not going to get the results. And that's why people think this stuff sometimes doesn't work. And I'm for that, because yes, it's not going to work if that's all you're doing. Like, simple as that. So that's why, again, my post, it's like, yeah, a box squat with 415 or whatever, that looks like training, but that could be rehab for the 300-pound power lifter, super heavyweight guy that's going to squat 600 later, right? It's just
Yeah,
difference.
no, I so much I've been more on the idea, which I don't have like an exercise phys background. I was a sport management. When I got into the training world about 4 years ago, just from a collegiate athlete standpoint, just fell in love with the weight room. And I'm fully on, that train where, one, I've said it before, is that I should never be able to tell what someone's sport is based off of their weight room session, essentially, without looking at them. Like, if I see someone who's built like a lineman, I'm going to take a wild guess and say you're either a sumo wrestler or you're a football player. You're one of the two. I don't think you're a track. I don't think you're a sprinter, but we'll go from there. But also the idea that I've seen a lot more of the PTs nowadays, like you said, is that it's gonna look the same. That, maybe that, like you said, for example, that box squat is going to be training for 87-year-old Betty Sue, but it might be for that 16-year-old, it might be a form of rehab where we're doing, maybe a focus on like the eccentric and trying to get a little more tendon stiffness.
Tempo.
But I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of times too, that's going down this rabbit hole is where, again, knowing that they're both kind of one and the same, is the idea that it's essentially, at the end of the day, it's putting a constraint where the constraint needs to be placed at that time. For example, when I work a lot with our, basketball guys at the collegiate level, where in season, I'm going to put more constraints just from, a force production and a volume of their full range of motion. Now, if we're going full range of motion, is that going to be detrimental to their on court stuff? No, but it's going to give a little more energy expenditure than probably what I want them to do with me. So we're going to utilize those constraints of what's that minimal effective dose that we can do in the weight room
Mhm.
compared to what we can do in different times of year. And like you said, it best was those little dial turns. I think training just has to be training, and, PT obviously is your return to play, but it's really turning those dials and finding where that range of motion is for athletes. So, and I think that collaboration as well. But yeah, man, I wanted to get, into that idea, and I know you have both the powerlifting and the, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, what was kind of, and I'm looking at my notes. So, I wanted to get into, and I said it too, the minimal effective dose. I know for guys like myself, but working, I think, on two very different types of athletes, except, with the powerlifting and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, what do you see like for those BJJ guys? What for a minimal effective dose where too strong starts to diminish their skill work? If you're kind of bringing in that powerlifting aspect a little bit with them and do a little cross training or cross education between the two, where is that effective dose essentially going to start? Anything higher than that, it's like, okay, now we're starting to get worse at our sport.
Yeah. This is actually like a perfectly timed question, because I have a guy that we're going to go to Anaheim end of May for powerlifting Nats, right? And he is starting to feel so dogged down by the sessions, but we're about to hit a taper, right? So even he is, as a powerlifter, is going to keter out here soon, and he's going to start feeling the effects. Versus, I have a female jujitsu girl, that makes sense, who's she's constantly competing, right? So now it's summertime, she's doing a lot of travel, which that's its own constraint, right? It's going to make recovery a little bit harder. But now she's on these like national level comps, these world level comps, and it's like, well, off season, they both probably have a very similar looking program. But now that she's traveling for comps, she's competing all day, like 6 matches. That's theoretically, yes, powerlifting, you have 9 lifts to make, but it's one at a time, right? So for her, it's like we might do a top set of whatever. Say right now, I think I have her. She's recovering from an ACL sprain, but right now I have her doing front squats, very slow, eccentric, but exploding up. So almost kind of like what would look like speed work. But we just do one top set, very hard. We might do one back off set just to keep the motor pattern going, but it shouldn't be something dipping into that recovery bucket. And I want to keep her fresh right now versus Dylan, the powerlifter. He is going to probably take 5 days of a true deload. And that's about it because he does better with the drop taper, but I'm going to dog him until that. And we're going to just run him essentially. I don't want to say run him into the ground, but I want his back offsets to make him question life choices. Cause that means we're starting to like he told me that the other day. He's like, I just don't know if I have the dog in me anymore. And I'm like, that means we're doing what we need to be doing because we need to taper and super exceed that. But it reaches a point, his comp, I want him tired right before going into. Becca, I need her fresh because she's going to have multiple weekends of all day, for a whole weekend of matches. And it's like, well, let's get one hard thing in and then the rest smooth. Dylan, let's keep going down, man.
We're gonna keep questioning life choices. That
Yes.
I feel like if he wants to question that many life choices, just put him on hypertrophy clusters and just
Yeah,
have him run it
exactly.
8 weeks.
Yeah, 12
You're
by
gonna
threes.
question that. Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna question the 12 by threes. I ran it. I'm a sicko. I ran it back to back to start the year. I did my 8 weeks. Yeah, we had to buy a
We
lot
were
of new
talking about
clothes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to buy a lot of new clothes. In the last like 3 weeks, I just got back into athlete training, and I'm like, a 3 by 5 never felt so good in my life.
I feel so good after squats for the first time ever.
Yeah. I'm like, "Wait, so I don't have to, like, be crawling or, like, crying after a back squat? Like, this is awesome. I miss this." Yeah, but that whole idea, where I think it also is that individuality, like you said, where you have one athlete that, yeah, you're gonna run that person essentially into the ground, and you're gonna go as hard as you can before you completely deload and do a
Ugh.
big back off for them, versus someone that's like, "Hey, like, we need to kinda modify because 'cause you're consistently going." And I feel like too, and you have a really good background, I think, with youth sports. I feel like a lot of times too, not to that same extent, but with I think Becca, you said was her name, is that it's almost that idea where a lot of youth athletes nowadays too are starting again, not trying to, they're obviously different, but a lot of people in the youth athlete realm are starting to just run their kids into the
Yeah.
ground without any like idea of what it's doing to them. We have like down the road from me, these guys that I did my internship in college with, private sector, one of the owners of the gym, he has a son who's about to go into high school. And he was talking about the idea like Kobe used to work out like this. And I'm like, yeah, but Kobe Bryant was Kobe Bryant. Like, and everybody works out very differently. But he was asking, like, from him not getting burnt out and his son not getting burnt out going into high school, he's like, all right, well, what would be like the dosage like of like the athlete training? And I'm like, first of all, like you're gonna see if, and he starts talking about the idea of overtraining. I'm like, you're gonna notice if he overtrains or if he starts to
Yeah.
get into that, functional overtraining or non-functional or overreaching. I misuse the words, or non-functional overreaching, that they're gonna start to see a decrease. So I would love to know, like, kind of what have you seen? Because I know it's been a little while since you've been in the youth sport realm. And even with your current athletes that you work with, how would you typically notice some of that overreaching or potentially overtraining, like kind of how they're feeling? Or how much would you see it in that youth sport? Because I feel like it's a lot more, I feel like I see it a lot more in youth sports than I do in adults at times.
Yeah. It's like you got to think who's going to be more predisposed to overtraining is going to be a growing human, especially going through all the hormonal stuff because their body is trying to take in everything that it can. And it's like on top of that, they have, 7:30 to 3 o'clock school. So mentally, they're zoned in for that amount of time. And then it's like they probably had practice before and after. And now again, Ben works with a lot of volleyball players. So I come in and I'll hang out for sessions and then I might have like a client or two after. But it's like first thing he asks, how many games did you guys play this weekend? And they're like, oh, 5 games. I'm like, when was your last practice? We practiced up until Thursday, and then games started Friday night, and then we had all day Saturday, and then we had half a day Sunday. That's insane. And we know how dynamic and how much strain on like your tendons jumping, frequent jumping can be, right? So when you program plyometrics, it's like, well, let's have a day or so in between because you need to recover. Imagine doing 3 days of that in a row and expecting them to then go to practice Monday and be fresh. I think that's so silly. And so it's like the big thing we see, like, again, he asked, how many games? How are you guys feeling? And they're like, pretty beat up. And I'm like, honestly, most of those kids after a weekend, if they're feeling beat up, there's a line where it's like, well, are they just being soft? But most of the time, it's like they're feeling beat up this weekend. Next weekend, they're feeling beat up. Now they're feeling beat up, and now it's like, oh, her Achilles is aching, her kneecap hurts. I just don't want to practice anymore. Like you start to hear these questions. Like if you just ask, do you enjoy practice right now? And they're going to be like, no. That's probably the easiest sign for me to like, okay, maybe we need to not have so many games and just be athletes. And these kids do club in their off season of the same sport. And it's like Ben and I went on a rant because then they want their weight training to look like sport training. And I'm like, so now you have them 24/7, 365 trying to be a like I'm just throwing volleyball out there just as an example. It's not all, but it's like now you're just doing that year round. How do you not anticipate overtraining, overreaching, overuse injuries? When you zoom out, things make sense. But people get so fixated on when they zoom in, they're like, well, we need to get her vert up and she needs to be quicker on her reaction time. So we need to be jumping, jumping, jumping. And it's like there has to be a base layer to happen and there has to be a recovery aspect. Her cup is completely empty. Why we need to subtract, not add, if that makes sense.
Percent. So like, and I felt like I would see this a lot, even with like the hockey kids. So I also do a lot of stuff with like
Ooh.
high school hockey.
Hockey guys are
And
built different, man.
yeah, they're all international kids. Like there's a few kids from the States, but they're all like French Canadian. They're
Yep.
it's both boys and girls too. And they're both teams are like nuts in the weight room. But like for example, I have a girl who just turned 15 and she was doing a trap bar deadlift. She literally did a one rep of like 235. I'm like, you're sick. I'm like, you just became my favorite person, by the way.
Yeah. You're like, hell
I'm like, yes, let's go. Everybody,
yeah.
she's 15. She hasn't even fully hit puberty yet, and she's pulling 2 plates. Let's go.
She's gonna be a monster. Yeah.
Yeah, but even the whole idea, and I've had conversations with a lot of sport coaches, obviously, because whether it's the collegiate realm or even being outsourced for high school, like I have those conversations where I have kids who are coming to me and they're just completely gassed, and I'm not able to do with them what I have planned because
Right.
of their overuse and just over practicing of their sport specific skills. So I actually ended up having to have a whole conversation with, both coaches that, like one of the ideas was while we're in season, we're going to have a full on conditioning day. I'm like, I'm going to stop everybody in their tracks right there. I don't think that's ideal. I'm going to use my expertise. If they're already doing conditioning in practice, and just like you said, the cup idea, I was like, listen, you guys are filling up cups that you're going to fill up. And obviously during an in season, it's their sport specific play is going to be the most important thing. Outside of that, what I have to fill is I always think of the idea as what they're not getting. So what are they not getting on hockey? They're not getting strength work and they're not getting opportunities to, get a little more tendon stiffness, and if we're doing like some lighter tiered plyos or we're doing some plyometrics, crazy enough, I actually, depending on how they're feeling, because I'll ask the kids how they feel at the same time, and I might change one or two things outside of the plan I currently have. But like I'll say, hey, crazy enough, I know it's a high impact. We might do some depth drops because I want you guys to get on and be able to absorb that contact because and I do it for all of my athletes, especially basketball. I'm like, we're not going to do pogo hops like before you go practice because you're going to jump up and down
A
75
million times.
times in the next. Yeah, you're going to jump up and down 75 times. Why am I going to add in 15 extra reps of that? So, but we're not going to get is you're not going to get the opportunity to work on your landing and work on, the absorption of all the force that's coming down and to get your body in that. So then you know what that feeling is without overdoing it. It amazes me. And I'm going to start going off the rails and into another topic. And I didn't even have this written down, but it was the whole idea like of letting the expert be the expert. And I've ranted so badly about this at times. I don't, and you can chime in on your thoughts. But if I have a sport specific coach that's like, I want my workout, I want the kids to work out like a hockey player. I'm gonna look at them and be like, then go play hockey. That's your workout.
Yeah.
You want them to do that? Go play. Like, I don't understand. I would love to get your take and just your idea of having people who really don't have a background or knowledge really giving their 2 cents and being like, well, I think they should do this. I think you should do that. Well, I think you should shut up and let the expert do what they're supposed to. So
Right.
I don't know what you had to say on that.
Some years ago, I've always kind of been involved. I was a swimmer like growing up. I went to college to swim, and then I just got out of cardio altogether and did strength training. But I did do strength and conditioning for high school swimmers and the club swimmers, 2021, 3 or something like that. And again, my goal is to treat them like an athlete in there. You know this, right? And it's like they come in, they're like, "Well, we need to be doing straight arm lat pull downs." I'm like, "You just did a 7,000-yard practice where that was all you did. You absolutely do not need to be doing that because that's going to literally just lead to injury." And it's like, well, why do you have us squatting? I'm like, you do have to push off the wall, but you also have to just build a good squat base because that is very fundamental across every action you will do as a human being, right? And then, of course, I get I'm gonna do some, I don't want to say stereotyping, but you always have the one athlete who thinks that they're way better than they are and that they have this opportunity to go play at a D1 and their parents go all in on it and they just think that that's their little angel and we need to protect them or do everything possible. And it's like those are the ones that seem to bring the most problem because now all of a sudden the parents know exactly what they need. Well, why aren't you doing that? Why don't you do this? You know? Did you go to school for this? Did you like is this what you eat, sleep, breathe? No, you're a parent. You have a full-time job and you have 2 kids to take care of. How about you utilize your resources for which you pay for and trust that that professional is going to have your kid's best interest at hand, right? And so now it's like, oh, well, we hired her to have a personal trainer for the other 2 days a week that you aren't training her. Like, so now she's practicing in the water 6 days a week. She's seeing me 3 days a week for about, 75 minutes each on top of morning practices, swimming. Now you want her to literally be doing 2 to 3 practices a day every day. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but that would run that professional athletes don't do that, dude. And their whole
Yeah.
job is to do this stuff. And it's like, zoom out and look at the pros and see that they recover just as hard. And maybe there's more of a mental game for them because they have that resource allocated now to focus on, watching tape or whatever it is. And it's like, your kid's not a professional athlete. Your kid is a student athlete and they have to build being a person first. And then maybe let's have them have an off season to where they're not doing something that is swimming or volleyball or hockey. Go be a kid. Like, come on. Like, this is why I
Yeah.
like Patrick Mahomes because he like preached all this stuff. Like, I was a 3-sport athlete and I didn't dedicate my entire high school career to football. I did all these other sports. I mean, Michael Jordan, basketball, baseball. Like, that's controversial if we talk about why he went in baseball. But like, he was an athlete and he was again, controversial. I think he's way better. I think he holds the GOAT in my mind for basketball over LeBron. Fight me. But
Thank you.
uh,
Cody, I knew I liked you. You just solidified yourself even more. Whoever wants to debate that, you're losing your debate, by the way. Michael Jordan will always be there.
exactly. But that's always been kind of like my experience. And then even seeing how some of like Ben and I treat his athletes and then we collaborate and work together like in his own gym. But it's like, again, parents are present. what are you guys seeing? And it's like sometimes the discussion is we just have to work on things that they're not getting and let other things rest. That could solve 90% of these problems instead of continuously going down the line and then they have to get shots and whatever else goes down the line. But that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah. So I very similar to I had in the private sector, I have very few private sector people I work with, but I had probably about a year ago, I had like a 12-year-old kid or something. And he's never really touched, weights. And, he's a string bean. And his dad was like, yeah, I want to get him like big. And I'm like, well, it's not gonna happen in 3 weeks. I'm gonna tell you that. Like that's if you think in 3 weeks he's gonna have to buy a whole new wardrobe, that's not happening. I promise
No.
you, because also he hasn't hit puberty yet. It's not gonna happen. He's gonna get, majority of his adaptations and his improvements are gonna be from a motor unit and a neuromuscular perspective. Like it's gonna be
Yeah.
all neurological. It is gonna have nothing to do with probably his size of the body. But I worked with them for like 6 weeks. And the dad's like, yeah, I'm not seeing improvements in how big he's getting. So I'm just going to train him. And I'm like, okay, like your check cleared for the remainder of the time. So by all means, dude, like I'm not
Yeah.
even going to argue you at this point. And I love the idea too of letting the kids, very similar to like Pat Mahomes and Michael Jordan. Even though he's not the go, LeBron James too. Basketball and football.
Well, yeah.
A lot of these pro athletes who obviously specialize in one sport now because that's what they get paid millions of dollars to do.
Right.
Is the whole idea that they were able to play all these different sports all year round. So I feel like it's so important for these kids, especially at a youth age, to hold off as long as possible. And I was guilty of it. When I got into high school, I just went all in on one sport and I played that sport all year round.
Yeah.
But if I were to do it again, I'd probably say, hey, in the fall, maybe I'm prepping for basketball. And, the wintertime I'm playing basketball. But in the spring, I used to play baseball when I was younger. And I wish I continued with that. And then in the
Yeah.
summertime, I'm doing whatever. I'm just doing something for myself. Like, and also being a kid at the same time, but having that opportunity to work on my body. I feel like, and this might be a controversial thing, I feel like the idea of the specialization or the focal point really young, and also something like an AAU model is detrimental to these kids. As someone who played AAU growing up, the whole AAU model at 12 years old, well, why is your kid so tired? Well, he just played 5 games in 36 hours. That's probably why he's tired. And then consistently going, that you don't get an off season. And I know we touched on it. It's going to be controversial. That I think honestly, a kid nowadays knowing how the AAU model was is going to almost be better off not doing AAU, or is going to have to be like, hey, maybe you play here and there, but the volume of what you're doing, it's going to be a lot. So I didn't know what your thoughts of that. I know we kind of touched on it, but your kind of thought on that early specialization versus playing as many sports as long as you can.
This is where I'm probably stepping out of my expertise when I like say this, but a lot of it comes down to like following the money. Youth sport nowadays, like compared to like me growing up in the 90s, youth sport was not a monetized model. It was, hey, here's the flag football sign on the side of the highway. Here's the number, call if you want your kid to play. And it was like $5 and you have all season, right? It was fun. But now it's like you have these AAU models where it's kind of like we have all these games that you have to attend to, and like your kid is the missing link to our 36 other people that we have involved on this team. You know what I mean? It's like, and there's not like this like tiered system, but youth sport now is $1 billion industry, if not more. And then you tag on, this is where social media, I think as a whole, can be a very powerful tool for good, but it can also have that reflection of being not for good. I don't want to say evil, but you have people that get into these situations or these companies or organizations for the wrong reasons. They see money signs, they don't see helping the youth development. They don't see, how this is going to be good for the community situation. So I see these models as like only growing because now it's like, I mean, there's some AAU teams that have essentially brand deals with like Nike or like Reebok. That's awesome if they can get these kids free shoes, whatever that is. Like they need some good stuff. But it's like now these parents think that, oh, if I stick with this team and they stick with Nike, they have a chance to have a sponsorship or something like that. And it's like now we have parents overstepping, we have organizations sitting through, and it's forcing these kids to play year round. I say forcing very loosely, but it's these kids just want to be kids. Like, I guarantee you, Jimmy just wants to play Call of Duty on the weekend. Like, he just wants to sit down with his bros. It's not the same as like when we were kids, but it's like we're probably going to see a large drop off of freaks of nature. I think we've seen like these crazy youth athletes like come out and they're just absolute monsters when they get to like collegiate and pro. But now you're going to see heavy levels of like dropout and hate for sport because it's been forced upon them. And it's like, why? I think it's very simple to see, but again, that's not my area of expertise. It's just things I've noticed along the way. And I think maybe that might have something negative to impact these models. But I know it's not sport performance direct, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember growing up, like where I am. I remember my dad was telling me that there was this one high school athlete, that he was like an amazing high school basketball player, and he was gonna go off to some big D1 schools, but from a very young age, it was kind of just forced onto him
Mhm.
so much. And the craziest thing is, he had an opportunity to go play, but after high school, he never played he never played an organized for a team after that, because from such a young age and through high school, everything, it was forced down him so much that
Yep.
he after high school he was kind of just like, I'm done. Like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna go play Call of Duty. I'm gonna be a 17-year-old doing it. I'm
Yep.
gonna hop on MW2 and we're gonna get we're gonna get sweaty on everybody here. Don't
Yep.
hide in rust. We're getting sweaty on
I'm gonna
everybody.
camp with my noob tube and I'm just gonna get these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. So obviously we went down a pretty good rabbit hole, but getting back into like the sport performance, I think it still all relates at the end of the day. So I know you did a lot of, or a little bit actually, of like pro sport rehabbing down in North Carolina. So I didn't know if you want to kind of talk about essentially that whole experience working with the pro athletes, and then any kind of like movement debt that you would see, or like the biggest like mobility issues or biggest issues that you would see with those pro athletes from the position that you were in.
Yeah. So I worked for kind of like a adjunct facility that was associated with the Panthers. So we got to see a lot of the Panthers athletes, and then in the summer it's a big area for just pro athletes to have like a house. I don't know. Charlotte, North Carolina is too fucking hot for me, man. It was hot. But anyway, aside from that, like we get these guys who, linemen that are 300 plus pounds, and I was a much smaller human being, that was just before COVID into COVID. Their legs would literally probably weigh as much as me. Like like it was insane. But then we had like a rookie running back come in who was super athletic, super lean. Like actually, like I would label him truly as just a generalized athlete that just had ball handling and speed like no other. But again, like he came in, he was trying to prove himself into the season. So he was training on his own on top of everything, just so he could try to show up and maybe get, first or second string. You know what I mean? Ended up like tearing a meniscus. And I was down because he was like, I'm just trying to make my name. But then you get, I'm blanking on, there's a Jets player that I was like, I don't know how you're a human being because you are so far like evolved you're just a true giant in my opinion. But he was super chill, and like it's these big guys that look scary and they're harmless. Like they just like, yeah, man, I just like chill. All right, we'll get along just fine. But you see these guys, I think the veterans, you see a lot of that movement debt. I would say just their movement quality in general because of probably burnout or just years of doing it. So maybe longer warm-ups because they couldn't get into those deep end ranges to do whatever they needed to do to get going. Surprisingly, I would say some of the biggest movement debt was probably just hip mobility in general, just trying to get into these deeper end ranges because a lot of their game isn't into deep positions. And these are big guys. So, weight room, yeah, let's squat heavy, but a lot of heavy box squats. Probably in the off season didn't do much full range or as tolerable full range moving through. Besides that, I mean, they still remain powerful. There's a lot of like pro CrossFitters that we worked with over there. And the movement debt was just, they never rested. They just always thought they had to be at prime fitness 24/7. So those guys were always fun because I could push them, but I had to push them in manners that they just weren't ready for. But yeah, it was a fun experience. I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, yeah, it definitely did. Yeah, it's good to know that you have 330 pound behemoths that are just like this, be like, yeah, like
That run like
I'm
a
just a normal human
440.
being.
It's like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, it's
terrifying.
yeah, like, if I saw one of them running sprinting towards me, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm probably gonna be frozen, knowing that they're running a 4.4. I'm like, "You know what? This is it. This is it for me.
I'm
I'm
done.
I'm just gonna get down I'm down in the fetal. We're done. I stand 0 chance.
Literally,
No
just
chance on them."
evaporated as they won't run by. It's like, oh
Yeah.
man.
Like, hoping I can hit a PR basically sprinting at that rate. That would be great that'd be great sprint training is, you know what? You have someone scary running behind you, you're gonna run as fast as you
You're
can.
gonna, yeah,
Like,
literally.
yeah, might have to do that, and I just gotta find somebody who who will do that. No, but I think, with the movement debt, and I feel like it's not even just football, but I've a lot of athletes, I feel like I've seen and again, this is not too much into my area of expertise or to my practice, but I feel like I see a lot of them that generate hip issues. I mean, obviously with basketball guys, I see a lot of like knee issue as well, just from the amount of knee flexion that they're constantly doing, just being that constant force of jumping up and down, and all their movements. Yeah, all the change of direction, everything that they're doing. Where I feel like working in that deep range of motion. I know we talked about earlier the whole idea like of constraints and maybe doing like box squats and everything. I feel like it's also at times doing a disservice if we don't get a lot of these athletes. And I know there's a time and place for everything, but getting them into that full range of motion. Obviously, everybody's full range of motion is going to be different from a number of different things, from what their body mass is, what their body movement is going to be, any kind of, prior injuries, constraints on
Mhm.
that side. Yeah, obviously, the length of their limbs and everything else like that. But I feel like I've seen a lot of people too just focus so much on like partial movements or like doing like a lot of ISO, like a lot of ISO. Like I feel like on Instagram recently, I've seen so many things related to
Uh,
isometric holds or not moving in a full range of motion. And I just want to reach through the phone and be like, guys, if you know anything, the amount of benefit you're getting in a full range of motion when you're obviously able to is going to be so important for these athletes, especially because of obviously it's not as chaotic when we're working with them, but there's so much more chaos in sport. If we can get them into those different angles and into some of those different, not even movement patterns, if we can just get them into different like movements and have them kind of explore different areas that might not be traditional sagittal frontal transverse plane, but it's gonna, allow their joints to kind of explore those different areas. When it all of a sudden it does happen in sport because there's a lot more chaos, it's not going to be as detrimental. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's going to
right.
fully prevent an injury, but now, okay, well, if I get hyperextended a little bit, in my shoulder, well, if I'm used to having my shoulder, move that far back in extension and have a little more mobility, it's not going to be nearly as bad, I don't think.
Right.
Again, this is to an extent. I'm not saying it's fully not going to feel good, but definitely going down that rabbit hole of the whole idea like when you're able to do the full range of motion, like, or is there any kind of training essentially that, the whole idea of the isos and, like I feel like a lot of people nowadays, and again, this is I think going back to social media, and I'm rambling a little bit now, is like there's so many people who put too much of an emphasis on like the eccentric part or like the ISO hold or like fully concentric. Like, what are your ideas on that? What do you see? Kind of have you obviously from a PT standpoint, tailoring with some of those movements, like just in general, kind of your ideas?
I think if we can put any kind of physical or nutritional science, whether it's biomechanics, physiology, whatever, I like the where it's like principles greater than methods, right? But Instagram operates the other way. Methods catch eyes, especially new methods over the principles. And I guarantee you, if it's a coach or a fitness influencer that is top of tier or whatever they do, but they only show these like exuberant movements or motor patterns or exercises or stuff. If you buy one of their programs, they probably still have a good base. If they have any stake in actually what they do, the programs probably still have a normal base that you would see on every other program. And it might be a little trickle of whatever that sugar and spice might look like, right? That's funny you mentioned the isometrics because Ben and I have been going, yeah. But this is where I would like to speak. Like, what's the goal of the isometric that they're doing? Are they doing it because it looks cool and then it feels like it's hard? Because there's a difference between hard and actual production of the goal, right? Just because something makes you tired doesn't mean it's producing the result that you want. That's the whole point of like where people are just doing a bunch of reps and cardio combined and they think that it's going to get them truly stronger. And it's like, if you've never done it before, it will, but eventually it's going to teeter out. It's just going to be cardio. Right. And I think my job now, as like someone who's in this like whole spectrum situation, when is the right time to do those isometrics? What's the point? It's to isolate a certain motion or activity that is going to be potentially detrimental or aggravating to that person. So, example with these like NBA guys, every year in finals, someone tears an Achilles, right? So maybe off season we do full range of motion and let the pronation drop happen because it's always a step back, a full dorsiflexion with pronation, right? Maybe we do full range of motion in the off season, but they have to do a million jumps during the games and they're doing, a 7-game series or something like that. Maybe that is the time to do isometrics, right? They're not going to be as detrimental. They don't produce as much fatigue. And it's something to easily keep the tendon stiffness and all the good, healthy blood flow into that area. But it's like, I remember going back on bodybuildingforum.com, like way back in the day, where people were talking about like doing the chest press squeeze for extra pec growth. And it's like, sure, it's a new stimulus, but we know isometrics aren't going to produce as much muscle growth as if you just used the muscle through an available range of motion, not even a full range of motion. And it's like by itself, it's not going to do much unless you tore your pec and you're in pec rehab 3 weeks out from surgery. You're probably not. That's going to be a different athlete than basketball players that are healthy and coming into off season. I don't think it's needed. I think it's a waste of time, but it looks cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think you said it perfectly, and I thought the same thing that it's like I said, there's a time and place I think for, if you wanna put a focal point on the movement, there's a time and place for it, and for me, essentially, my bias of it is if I'm gonna utilize isometrics, it's gonna be essentially for one of 2 reasons. One, it's because we're in season and I might use it as a primer for us to be
Sure.
like, "Hey, I just want us to get those muscles activated a little bit." So, like, we're gonna do, like, a split squat hold for, a certain time frame, for, like, 20 seconds just because I want you guys to start getting it going. Or if we even do it at the end, but essentially like ISO holds, whether it's yielding or overcoming isometrics, but like just finding that sticking point for them to be like, okay, this is where that good point is for you. This is where you start to feel it. I want you to just be in that position. And essentially it's going to get that blood flow to that area specifically. And it's honestly, it's slightly fatiguing, but it's not going to be as taxing as probably the remainder of what we're going to do. And then the other part I always say is like the return to play aspect that again, it's just that finding that sticking point and that constraint that an athlete might have where, okay, and when I was younger, I had a really, really fun, grade 3 quad contusion. Well, I had to, yeah, it was a fun time. I was out of basketball for like it might have been a grade 2, but I was out of basketball for like an easy 2 months
Oh,
because I couldn't bend my leg. Like
yeah.
I tried to play through it and I just, little guy like me just setting up charges and guys just end up kneeing my quad. Like enough of those without the padded stuff. That felt really good.
Yeah.
But like the first time I ever had, first time I went to PT, they're like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. We got to get you in we have to see where your full range of motion is. So we're gonna have to pull your leg back. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, please, just someone give me something to bite on. Like
Literally.
they're like, all right, yeah. I'm like, okay. They're like, count to 3. 1 didn't even get to 2 or 3. They just put my leg right back, and I felt like someone put a knife in my leg. Because there started to be like ossification in the
Yeah.
quad muscle, so they had to start to break all that up. But again, like that, and a return to play aspect, it was that every single time they would look to me and be like, all right, we're gonna find that sticking point. Essentially, we're gonna find where your range of motion can go to, and we're gonna get to there and try to slightly go lower each time. Like we're not gonna like go crazy, but a lot of times to get that quad strength back up at the same time, I had to do a lot of isometric holds. So I feel like that's the biggest thing is whether you're specifically doing a yielding or overcoming ISO, in season, or you're just doing return to play. I feel like outside of that, why would you essentially include a lot of like isometric sticking point holds at that point. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. So
Yeah,
uh,
I've seen some stuff with, like, people again, if we go back to, like, bodybuilders not having calves, and they will put themselves in cast, like, during the day in max dorsiflexion, which is essentially producing a pseudo isometric in hopes that it grows their calves because what they're doing isn't working, and it's like, when you do that for the first few weeks, you might see some muscle growth, but then it teeters out pretty quickly, and it's like, take it for what it's worth, but don't obsess over it, you know? Which speaks on that.
yeah. Let's we know you're gonna have the newbie gains, and then guess what? It's gonna plateau, buddy, and that's where you
It's
have to get those other adaptations in. You want to get bigger calves, so did the rest of us, believe me. So you want to do that? Start overloading those puppies. Get a full range of motion, get some volume and some blood flow going into that,
Yep.
and then after that, just pray because I think we've all tried it. So, um, but yeah, and then I also want to knowing that you've worked with a lot of like that had the opportunity to work with pro athletes and now obviously with the athletes you have, a lot of those practices that you've had from the rehab standpoint, essentially what a lot of the similarities or major differences that you've had with some of those rehab practices with, those football guys and just some pro athletes to even like the power lifters, some of Ben's athletes, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, like what like the similar practices that you brought or major differences with that rehab, how has that kind of changed essentially your approach on coaching at all, if it has?
Oh, that's a good question. The biggest thing I would say would be how I talk to them or how I just simply communicate with them. I don't say talk to them, but there's going to be a time and place where someone might truly be just mentally a little bit more sensitive to certain aspects of what I might say. So I've definitely had to, especially the younger athletes, my goal is to not scare them while they're in rehab, but to empower them versus we got these big guys, nice and strong, they have a set mind and goal, and that's all they're focused on. And they don't care what I say, they just want me to do what I do. Right. So I could say whatever to them and I can call them out a little bit harder. But definitely like the younger athletes or maybe not I don't wanna say they're not as dedicated, but someone that's just like, "I do this for fun because it keeps me mentally, like, together." I don't wanna say tiptoe, but I definitely have to do this where I'm watching my words because 'cause I'm trying to think my way through a little differently. I naturally am I don't wanna say I'm a blunt person, but, like, I don't really beat around the bush much. So, that goes against my just natural demeanor, and I have to sit back and think and take my time. On top of that, the load management conversation happens a lot less, I think, when I was working with those higher level athletes because that's what they do, right? Now, if you got like a James Harden who's going out the night before, game 3, that's a load management conversation to occur, in some shape or form. But most of these athletes are just worked like dogs. And I get like people say like today's generation is soft, but we have a faster world. We have your brain takes up like 20% of your energy expenditure. So now we have our brains literally fighting for every piece of information and trying to store it and process it on top of self-organizing a movement while it's in sport or game or whatever or practice. I think the demands are just as high, just in different contexts or different aspects, but it still can take over the cup. Stress is stress. Yes, there's distress and eustress, but at the end of the day, it all comes from the same bucket. We don't think of it like that. We think like, oh, like whatever. So I would say there's more load management conversations with those younger or not pro athletes. And maybe I have a little bit more hands on with the higher level athletes. Like I'm doing the stuff that people kind of, I mean, even me at points on social media will crap on, dry needling and cupping and doing adjustments and stuff. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just how reliant are they going to become on that? And it's like these guys just have to feel better because they have a game. They got a career on the line, right? These guys, they don't have unlimited resource. They don't have unlimited time. What's going to be the biggest bang for the buck? And then we can filter out or dissect what else we can do to fit into the constraints that they have as their lives, right? So besides that, let's fucking lift heavy, let's jump, move fast, and get juicy, you know?
Yeah, get juicy. As we say, get big and freaky. That's what we want to
Get big
do.
and
Just
freaky. Yeah.
get big and freaky at the end of the day. Yeah, I feel like with a lot of my younger athletes, even unfortunately, some of my college guys, the load management conversation definitely comes into play a lot. Like if I try to say to them, hey, we're doing, whatever number of reps, and we're going to do it at like an RPE of 7 or 8, and saying, essentially that means you got like whatever weight you pick, you're not maxing out, like you're not fighting for your life on the last rep. You're going to finish that and be like, okay, like that was hard, but maybe I could do like a few more. And then I try to say that, and meanwhile the hockey kids are like trying to do 1 rep maxes. I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Like I
Guys,
know there's a language barrier, but this is not like insane right here. Like
no hard,
it
hard.
says
Yeah.
it says it in the app. It says it on Train Heroic. I literally put it out. I'm like, guys, I said, and sometimes for them, I will actually pre-write their percentage, because I'm also a bit like, I started to shift more into like the RPE idea, just because of the feeling of like, all right, that was an all out or anything.
Mhm.
But I used to be really big and still am big at times, true for compounds like the percentage. So I'll literally be like, okay, like I know an RPE of 8 is like 2 reps RIR essentially, or 2 reps left in the tank roughly. So what's our, 2 rep optimal amount? If we're going for 6 reps, what's our 8 rep optimal max out? And that's going to be our 6 rep, that's going to be our RPE of 8 at 6 reps. And so I'll pre-program their weight for them, and they'll be, I'm like, that doesn't look like 225, by the way. That looks like 315. Don't know if we listen. I know, again, the language barrier. We're going from the metric system to the standard system, but it doesn't look that different, guys.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
funny.
having those questions or having those conversations and telling guys like, listen, there's a time and place. Yes, we want to all lift heavy and lift fast, but again, just like everything else in training and everything, there's a time and place for us to do this. Not the day before a game or before you start playing. We're probably not doing that. Your CNS is not going to be, it's not going to feel good. Your central nervous system is going to be completely cooked at that point. So yeah, those conversations are always fun to have with the athletes. I will definitely say that.
And they're like,
Um,
I just gotta get juicy," you know? And you're like, "Hold on."
yeah, just look. They look at me, and in their accent, they're just like, "I wanna get juicy." I'm like, "Listen, I do too. We
I
all
do.
do,
We
but
all do.
we all do. Naturally, we're not going on TRT. We're naturally getting juicy."
It takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, believe me, it takes time. I'm still trying to get to there.
Same, man, same.
So awesome, dude. We've been talking great shop for about an hour or so. Definitely want to get into the few segments that we have. So the first one is unpopular opinion. So what's something, and it can be anything training related or PT related. What's an unpopular opinion that you have? And it can be something that you completely agree with or something that you were just fully against. So any unpopular opinion you have.
Um, I think true how do I say this? I think true static stretching is going to be more or less a waste of time for 90 to 95% of people. Like, it's making a comeback, but most of us don't have time to sit there to accumulate 2 to 5 minutes of a stretch per side for all these things. That's like a hot topic that's been I don't like it. I don't static stretch, but whatever.
No, I I don't think I've had any of my athletes really say, unless they have time at the end, then I'll be like,
Sure.
okay, we'll saturate. But I'm gonna be honest, guys, just get moving, get the heart rate going. We're going ramp protocol here, baby. Grab the jump rope or start walking for like 5 minutes. Like, just get your blood flow
Just
going.
go ahead.
But I feel like I've seen a lot less, honestly, of static stretching, like a lot of times. In my field, I don't see them doing static stretching a lot. And also, like, just the time sake, like you said, it can take someone 5 minutes to do it. I'm like, if I'm doing 5 minutes of stretching, I want them like actually moving, getting their heart rate going up.
Mhm.
Like, I want the blood flow to start getting together. Like, I'm not gonna ask them to lie on their side and hold a quad stretch for 30 seconds. Like, no, we're not doing that. If I want to do that, we're better off just doing ISOs at that point.
Yeah, no, literally, have some tension in end range and work it. It's gonna do the same thing.
Yeah.
Less time.
More more than one way of getting to the solution. I say that about training all the time. I look at it like, because I'm a nerd. I look at it like math. I'm like, okay, like what's a number we're trying to get to? What's the end goal? What's the solution? Okay, if we're trying to get to X number, okay, well, how many different ways can you add two different numbers and it's going to get to that? If we're looking at like the number 10, okay, there's 1 and 9. There's 2 and 8. There's three.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's going to get us to where we need to be, and there's just more than one way to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And you gotta meet them. You gotta find that equation that fits them and then run with it.
yeah, yeah. Not everybody's training is the same. 100%. Not everybody is the same. But yeah, static. That's the first time I've ever heard something like that. I actually, I like the unpopular opinion. I'm hopping on that train. I like it.
It's making a comeback, and I don't know why, but anyway.
No, it's like people who watch like Goda or like Joel Seedman and think that's actually real. Like, don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a whole different.
That could be a whole other hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you off camera about this. Next one is rant and rave. I feel like a lot of other people do this too, but rant and rave, it's a great one. So what's something in the sport performance world that you want to rant about that you're like outside of the static stretching that you're like, man, I can't stand this anymore? And what's something that you want to kind of give praise to in sport performance?
My rant kind of goes down into that line of, again, sports specificity, I think more or less is a lie and a very easy way to consider going into overtraining. So it's like you have, again, like combat sports guys that are using gi grips for their rows and pull-ups, and it's like that's not doing anything if you're still practicing. Or you got football players that like they're on the belt squat machine, but they have someone pushing them while they're doing like a belt squat march. Like if you want to get your cardio in that way, great, but like go wrestle somebody, go like fight somebody, like actually try to like move them around. There you go. You don't have to add 600 pounds to your hips and move, in my opinion. So as far as like the sport performance, or people try to zoom in too much on one singular aspect. Do we know how complicated humans are? A little bit. One thing is not going to make or break a person as far as a sport performance or injury thing goes. And it's like, stop trying to get so specific. Majority of people don't need that. Even I would even argue if like by the time someone reaches a pro football level, most of that training should be pretty generalized, in my opinion. But rave, man, I don't know if I got anything to rave about specifically. You know,
You
I
can rave
will.
about Ben if you want to.
About what?
You can rave about Ben if you want, if you can't find anything else.
Ben Racky. I really enjoy people like Fred Duncan's page who show what Kobe used to lift. It was lat pull down, shoulder press, building like show what these guys actually did that have reached the top of the top, the 0.001%. And they show that the training works. You don't need to do all this like crazy specific stuff. So I really enjoy people bringing back like the principles over method aspect and showing it. And they have like actual proof of the stuff instead of these go-to guys that say like you're walking wrong and it's not using your hips. Bro, you're going to fall down if your glutes aren't working at all. Like that's not how this works, man. Like I raved again. I have more to rants again. I have more to rant.
Dude, I feel like I should get a sponsorship because in the fourth episode, I think this is either number 3 or I think we've gone 4 for 4 on someone ranting about Goda, which is
You're just doing marketing for them. Yeah, at this point. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. The 10% off of just never buy their program. How about that? 10% off of just don't buy it. Just don't.
Just don't buy it. We'll actually give you money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
You know what? We're going to give you money to not buy it. I feel like a lot of times too, like there's always easier things to rant about. I think sometimes it can be like a lot of personal biases, but I try to find the good in a lot of like the sport performance, but there are some people who make it very difficult to do that. So I don't blame you. Yeah, with sport performance and even with the rave, I love watching videos of these top award like pro athletes who are just doing traditional GPP training. And
Yep.
it is the best because in reality, you're never going to go wrong with GPP. Like you do a squat, you do a hinge, you press, you pull, you do something for your trunk. Guess what? You do those 5 things, you're going to be in a really good spot just in general. And this can be for any pro athlete or just anybody. You do those basic movements and you're overloading it and you're progressively getting better and maybe doing some adaptation or variation of it, you're gonna get something out of it. And like you said, humans are so complex. I like to keep my training simple. Like guys are like, Are we going to do this on Instagram? No, delete that. Get off Instagram. Go to
Yeah.
the trap bar. And I kid you not, I literally said to our basketball guys who did conventionals for the first time a few weeks ago that they were like, how do I do this? I'm like, lower your butt, pick the bar up off the ground, and then put it back down. And that was literally my entire cue. I'm like, literally just pick it up off the ground.
Just pick it up.
What? Just literally pick the bar up. And shockingly, actually non-shockingly, they understood it. I'm like, guys, we're not going to make this complex. Like, I'm not going to tell you 75 things at the same time because I don't like how I do that. So I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole sport specificity, if you want to play your sport, go play your sport. If you want to get better at basketball, go dribble basketball. Like, there's nothing that we're going to do in the weight room that's going to directly correlate to that. And it amazes me for like some programs. Now I'm starting to rant. It amazes me for some programs that like if they don't do really well, they're going to point to like the strength and conditioning coach. I'm like, what I do has zero correlation to your win-loss record. I'm not the one who's running the plays. I'm not the one who's subbing people in and out. Like with our basketball team, our best year, I was probably my worst year as a strength coach because I was so new, but we went 23-5 and that had zero correlation. This past year was probably my best year and guys got so much out of our lifts, but we won 8 games this past year. So like, again, that has nothing to do with me at the end of the day. Like they're not getting hurt. They're getting stronger. Their body can take on the stresses of going deep and playing 25 games, in a matter of, 3 months. Yeah. Like I did my job. Like they're able
Yep.
to be out on the floor and able to get better at what they do, but enhance those athletic qualities and maintain where they're at. But yeah, like the video of Steph Curry doing RDLs or Tatum doing trap bar deadlifts, not anything LeBron posts. I can't get on board with that. Nope, can't do that. Or like the stuff that Jordan does, just the traditional go watch The Last Dance. He's shoulder pressing. Do that.
Go do
Again,
that.
that's why Jordan's the GOAT. That is why. Yeah.
Oh,
But I love those posts when I see Tatum trap bar deadlift like 315. I'm like, yes,
here we
do
go.
it.
Yeah.
Like, yes, do that. That also has zero correlation to why he tore his Achilles, but just do it. Like, don't be Goda. That's not why he tore his Achilles. Because he just played in 100 games in however many months, and he
Yep.
plays like 5 games a week. So
You're
yeah,
like, this checks out when you zoom out and actually look instead of zooming so specifically in. You lose the forest for the trees, right?
yeah. That ooh, that's a good one. I think put that on a T-shirt. Yeah, what? That's a great saying. What was that? You lose sight of you lose. What was it?
Well, now you're making me like, it just came naturally. You lose sight of the forest for the trees. So like instead of trying to just find the forest where you need to go, you're so focused on trying to find that specific tree and you're gonna miss it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm a Lord of the Rings guy. I think that quote actually came from Lord of the Rings, but yeah, the old forest.
That's a good one. That's the first time that we're pinning that. Put it on a T-shirt. Yeah. And then last one is what advice would you give to a coach who's maybe trying to follow in your footsteps in the similar journey that you've had? One piece of advice that you can give to that coach, what would it be?
I would say the probably the best thing to expedite your career in all aspects, go live it. Go do whatever you can, even if it's for free. If you go to these seminars or you train someone for free or say, hey, I'll go do this stuff, like those free things can line up pretty well to getting you into the door anywhere, but you have to go do it and you have to live it. If you spend a year focused on doing that, you could catch up to be a top 99%. I think guaranteed. You just have to go out and put it in there instead of being an Instagram warrior and trying to learn off of Instagram. It's great to have the knowledge, but knowledge without action is just, hold on, education without action is just entertainment. If you're trying to be a coach, there has to be an application point to it. And just like sport training, you have to go play your sport to get better at your sport. It's the same principles over the methods situation. So that's what I would say. There's a young guy that's kind of around Ben and I's gym, well, Ben's gym, it's his gym, but he's trying to be a personal trainer and get into the business. And I keep telling him like, go do the free stuff, go talk to people, go try to network as much as you can. Just be about it for a year, and it'll be drastically different after that.
Yeah. Talk if you could talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time, but just be a sponge.
Yeah.
Take in every opportunity that you can. especially when you're, and I feel like even after 4 years, I'm still doing the same thing. Like as a younger coach, like, yeah, I'm 25 and, I've been in the college realm. I was thankful to have an opportunity and, I got other stuff, on the up and coming. And, at the end of the day, after all this time, I'm still like, I have so much more to learn. Like, yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years and I've had like kids at our school come and ask me stuff. And I'm like, I
I
I
don't know.
I don't know. Like, I just like lifting heavy circles, and I try to
Yeah,
get really good at it. Like, but yeah, I 100% agree. If you're go spend some time and do the actual thing, and get the application. So yeah, Cody, this was awesome. I truly appreciate you going on or coming on. If you can tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you, all that good stuff, and just plug yourself here.
yeah. Instagram, I'm Cody.prescription strength. Think I'm that on TikTok and probably YouTube as well. I don't get too crazy in the weeds there, but that's probably the main spot. Reach me on Instagram. Send me a message. I'm a real person. I will eventually get back to your DMs. But yeah,
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, this will be available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Thank you so much already for all the love that we've gotten on the podcast. We have a great lineup of coaches who have obviously been on, very similar to Cody, and we have a great lineup of coaches who are coming on in future episodes. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, please like it. It's free information for all you guys. It doesn't cost you guys anything. It costs me stuff to put it out for you, but we're all about getting the information and knowledge out there. So until next time, we will see you guys later. Boom.